A court has heard a harrowing account of the final moments of Sarah Everard's life before she was raped, murdered and set alight by a Metropolitan Police officer. Her family were at the Old Bailey as prosecutors outlined how Wayne Couzens used handcuffs and his warrant card to falsely arrest her as she walked home from a friend's house in South London in March. Sarah Everard's mother, Susan, said she was broken-hearted and tormented at the thought of what her daughter had endured. Couzens has pleaded guilty to kidnap, rape and murder and will be sentenced tomorrow. From the Old Bailey, Helena Wilkinson reports.
This was the first time full details of the crimes committed by Wayne Couzens were revealed in public. In the period before the attack, the firearms officer had completed a 12-hour shift at the American Embassy. He hired a car and wore his police belt with handcuffs. He spotted Sarah Everard as she walked home from a friend's house. Within 5 minutes, he'd shown her his warrant card, falsely arrested her for a breach of COVID regulations, and kidnapped her, putting her into the back of the car. The incident was witnessed by a couple travelling home in their car who thought Miss Everard was being legitimately detained by an undercover officer. Couzens drove Miss Everard to Kent. He raped and murdered her. He left her remains in Woodland in Ashford, close to land he owned. There were tears in the courtroom as Sarah Everard's parents spoke movingly about their daughter in victim impact statements. Susan Everard spoke quietly as she talked about the brutality and terror of her daughter's last few hours, alone with someone intent on doing her harm. The thought of it is unbearable, she said. I am haunted by the horror of it. Her father, Jeremy Everard, asked for a photograph of his daughter to be put up on video screens in the courtroom as he spoke. He demanded Couzens looked at him. He said Sarah was handcuffed and unable to defend herself. This preys on my mind all the time. Looking directly at Couzens, he said, I can never forgive you for what you have done, for taking Sarah away from us. Couzens appeared to shake in the dock. He will be sentenced tomorrow at the end of a 2-day hearing.
Scotland Yard has said it was sickened, angered and devastated by Couzens' crimes and acknowledged the case raised many questions and concerns. Our Home Affairs correspondent, June Kelly, considers the reputational damage to police forces across the UK.
Everyone in policing feels betrayed by this man's truly dreadful crimes. The words of Commissioner Cressida Dick 3 months ago when Wayne Couzens pleaded guilty to the murder of Sarah Everard. Since Dame Cressida became Commissioner in 2017, the issue of violence against women and girls has grown in prominence in the general public debate. As the first female head of the country's largest force, Dame Cressida has stressed her office's commitment to protect women and bring offenders to justice. The strong words have been undermined by the way Wayne Couzens abused his police powers. He may be denounced as a rogue officer, but this is a public relations disaster for the Metropolitan Police. Sue Fish, a former Chief Constable in Nottinghamshire, described the case as absolutely devastating for the police generally, and she focused on the issue of trust.
It is extraordinarily fractured in many communities, and particularly for women and girls, and policing has to really do some serious soul searching and think about what it's going to do in a much more radical way to respond to this.
Figures obtained under the Freedom of Information Act showed that in the 6 years up to 2018, nearly 1,500 accusations of sexual misconduct were made against police officers in England and Wales. Almost 400 were upheld, and nearly 200 officers were sacked or left the force. Police bosses with 30 years' experience stress how attitudes have changed since they began their careers. In many ways, the policing landscape has been transformed. Wayne Couzens was a dangerous predator in uniform, and the overriding question now is, could he have been stopped?
The business sector